I've been working on a guide for all the crafted items for a while now, but I tuned into one of Curry's developer streams, which you should as well because they're great. But spoiler alert, there are a ton of changes coming to some items. So rather than putting all of my efforts into getting something out that will become irrelevant in a few days, we're going to pause production for a little bit on that item guide, and I'll instead put my editing efforts into this very video that you're seeing right now. I hope this will be a pretty nice treat, because this, in my opinion, is one of the most bonkers, absurd games that I've ever played. Not necessarily the strongest board that I've ever played, but a contender. The amount of luck that I get in the first few rounds of the game is absolutely insane, but I don't want to spoil too much more, so let's just jump right into this game. Right off the bat, I hop into a fire region because I have 2 Fennekins on my bench. In the early game, I love to pair that with a Chimchar, and fire region will help enable that. But I also have potential for a poison opener or a Florigato based opener. And once the Magikarps are dealt with in my next shop, I get insanely lucky. It might not look like it right off the bat, but first things first, I can use Chimchar to do a Human 2 check. And bam, my Human 2 TM is Payday, which is an ability that generates gold upon kills, and it gets even stronger when you evolve its user. Speaking of evolving Payday users, say hello to Braixen. So we've already got a solid early game carry that generates me 2 gold every time it kills with its ability. But that's not all that's good about this shop. Firstly, Flabebe can be used in this round to help my Braixen cast more abilities, and it's also potentially a Flora angle. But I also have a Spinarak, which is a fantastic partner for Weedle. It's basically a Caterpie with Poison Synergy, which allows you to get Bug 2, Poison 3 with just 1 more Poison unit, which I already have thanks to Zubat. I'm also getting great item components that combine well with Payday, instantly crafting myself a Soldew for PP generation and ability power, and with Braixen already earning me lots of gold thanks to Payday. And you know what, let's throw up a nice little counter graphic, and I end up deciding to go for a Poison Opener alongside this Payday Braixen, even going into the next round of Spearows under 10 gold, because I'm confident that my Braixen will be able to pick up another Payday kill. And that'll end our PvE rounds with a 4 gold lead on every other player. Alright, first item carousel. I actually want the Miracle Seed so that I can make an early max revive, but that gets taken, so I'll just grab this magnet, no complaints there. And this being the final stage where I'm level 3, and add the fact that I have money generation and 4 Fennekins, this is the best time for myself to roll for a Delphox. So let's sit through my painfully slow rolling, picking up extra 1 cost to very slightly increase my odds of finding Fennekin. Because of this early rolling, I am able to grab myself a Kakuna, and very fortunate to get a second Braixen. I can even potentially grab a second Kakuna here and maybe even go for a Beedrill, but I decide against it because Kakuna's actually tankier than Beedrill, and I'd rather just use all my money into obtaining Delphox. Now, unfortunately, the round starts before I'm able to grab myself a Delphox, but I do continue to roll during the fight because I am going to level up next round, and I want the best odds possible of finding these Fennekins. Very quickly run out of money, but Payday allows me to squeeze in a few more rolls, and I get very lucky with my shops, already getting to 8 Fennekins, and in the very next round, hello Delphox. I wish I recorded my live reaction because I was laughing to myself so hard when this happened. Getting a 3-star unit this early is very rare. Having a unit with Payday this early is also quite rare. Having a 3-star unit with Payday and a Soldew is almost unheard of. Not only do I have an absurdly strong early game unit with very good stats, but it's also going to earn me 3 gold every time it kills something with its ability, and it's also backed up by one of the strongest early game openers in Poison 3 Bug 2, and now I can just sit back, relax, and sip on my tea as I watch my Delphox do its thing. Next fight, it earns me 6 gold, and wanting to make my Delphox's ability even stronger, I decide to level up aggressively to 5 here, so that I can slot in Psychic 2, giving it some more ability power and increasing the damage of that Payday. And I should make it clear that Payday already has reduced scaling with ability power, but it still scales, and every bit helps. In the next fight, we'll pick up another 3 gold. We'll grab ourselves a second Mystic Water and make an Aqua Egg, which is going to allow my Delphox to cast even more often. And another evolution in Golbat, just some more icing on the cake. And my next opponent actually has a fairly strong team. Strong for me, that is, because I earn another 9 gold here. So with that, I'm able to end my early game at 50 gold, level 5, a full win streak, and a solid team that's going to allow me to pivot into whatever I want. I even dropped my Poison Synergy this fight because I really want my Delphox to be able to get the kill and earn me 3 more gold. It's also nice to reduce the chances of poison and bug portals from showing up because those aren't really useful to me. Unfortunately, we miss out on Gyarados money, but I can't really complain. and I'll just hop into this portal that's right in front of my face with 2 psychic symbols and a human symbol. There are a lot of really strong psychic uniques, so I'd be pretty happy with one of those. However, my choices of psychic units are a little disappointing. Veluza can be a lot of fun with its gourmet angle, and Stantler can be very strong, especially for field, but with the items that I have and my Delphox, I don't really see a field angle here. I also look at the Tyrogue, which can turn into a solid frontline tank, but then I realize that I'm tunnel visioning, and the obvious choice is Smeargle, who has one of the most useful abilities in the entire game, which copies the ability of the unit to its left. So I have this absolutely ridiculous ability in level 3 Payday, and you're telling me I can get 2 of them? Sign me up! We're also going to get to level 6 and re-obtain Bug 2, because 2 Kakunas is still useful in the mid-game, but now my eyes are dead set on a Fossil Stone, because I want to give this Smeargle Psychic Synergy, not only allowing it to deal more damage with its Payday, but it also pushes me towards Psychic 4, where I will be able to get Unknowns, which have a lot of potential to even further my current lead. Alright, we're taking on an Amorphous Pivot here, and that's going to generate me another 6 gold. In the next round, we're able to get to level 7, but unfortunately no Fossil Stone quite yet. I end up grabbing myself another Mystic Water so I can make a Green Orb, and I'm actually looking to use this Green Orb for its PP generation effect. Still has potential to heal my frontline obviously, but the main use is to generate even more PP for my Smeargle and my Delphox to generate me even more money. We've got another player here trying to pivot Amorphous alongside an AD Horsey. Amorphous is really popular right now for some reason. Well, the reason is because there's a lot of new ad picks that all work really well in Amorphous comps, and another reason because everyone seems to think that Vanillish is OP. I do think it is a little bit overtuned, but overall not too threatened by it, and Horsey for some reason is also very much on the rise. Horsey hasn't been changed in a very long time. It's always been great as an early game carry for me, but I definitely don't think that it's overpowered, and I don't really understand where all this new hype for it is coming from. But enough about the current flavors of the month, and let's move on to this next carousel, where there are 2 Fossil Stones that I really want, but I am sitting very well in first place with a 50 gold lead against the player in second place. Thankfully, Fossil Stones aren't a very coveted item component, but one gets taken away, and I'm very much hoping that the second doesn't get claimed, and it doesn't, which makes me a very happy Nummel. And with that, we can make ourselves a Dawnstone and throw in an Abra, bringing us to Psychic 4 and Human 4 synergies. That's going to be even more ability power for my Payday Pokemon, as well as more healing thanks to Human Synergy, and I'm going to be able to find myself some Unknowns in the shop, which is going to be very nice, because Smeargle, being able to copy the unit's ability to its left, it's going to be able to do some pretty crazy things with those Unknowns. Our next opponent is running a normal team, but that's just going to be 9 more gold for my bank account. And at stage 13, I am doing so well with my money that I'm able to go to level 8. That's one of the fastest level 8s I've ever seen, especially when you consider that I still have so much money saved up. I'm now at Psychic 6, which gives my Psychic units even more ability power, and as long as I'm able to grab one singular Payday kill, I'll be able to get back up to 50 money. And that's going to be pretty easy against yet another Amorphous team backed by the Laddie Dragons. This player already has a Ghastly at stage 13, which would normally be remarkable, but I mean, look at my state in the game right now. Alright, next up we got Mewtwo and Mew, and if I was really smart, I would be using my gold to roll for Unknowns. There's a lot of Unknowns that work really well with Smeargle that you can use during PvE rounds to further your lead, like using Unknown I for item components, Unknown W for units, and Unknown D for dittos. But honestly, I'm just so far ahead, I thought it would be funny to beeline it to level 9. I mean, technically I could hit it right now, but I don't want to lose my 50 gold and 5 interest bumps. But regardless, we're going strong on the level 9 speed run here. We're able to grab another 3 gold as we take down Mewtwo and Mew. And I originally wanted to make an X-ray vision with this magnet on my Delphox, but ultimately I see the opportunity to grab a Miracle Seed and make a Gracidia Flower, and I also pick up an Unknown Eye from this Psychic 6 shop. But yeah, we'll go ahead and make the Gracidia Flower right now, giving both my Delphox and Smeargle some attack speed. That's going to allow them to attack faster and cast more often and get me even more gold. Alright, next round. Guess what? We're against yet another Amorphous team, and this one's actually quite strong. They're already at Amorphous 7, and my opponent's Magcargo is able to get some pretty strong ability casts against my team. The Vanillite is doing a good job at locking down my Smeargle, preventing it from casting, and their Wynot is able to work their way right into my 2 strongest units, and it's able to pull off its ability with perfect timing right as it takes a huge chunk of damage, which helps burst down my moneymakers and loses me my very first round. Well, it had to happen eventually. And in the next round, not only do I grab a second Unknown Eye, but I'm also able to find a Grookey in the shop, who, despite not having Psychic Synergy, is actually a fantastic unit in these kind of Psychic teams. The The main reason being that it generates PP to adjacent allies, but another reason is that he's pretty bulky and he doesn't move. A pretty reliable way of keeping your squishy damage dealers safe in the backline. And of course, it's got a pretty useful ability, but it's not the most impactful thing unless you're able to get it Psychic Synergy or a lot of ability power. Next opponent is a ground team, which is already looking very bulky. They've got pretty great ground items and a Rhyhorn already, and my very lackluster frontline just gets chewed through immediately. And this fight is going to be yet another loss, but not before earning 12 gold. And we'll move on to the next round, which is a carousel, and I have more than enough money to hit level 9 already. I grabbed myself an Unknown D from my Unknown shop, and I'm still in first place, so I'm moving last in this carousel. All the components I want get taken, and I'm left with the choice of a spoon or a magnet, and honestly, I can't really tell which one I want more. So ultimately, I decide to just let Arceus decide, and I look away from the carousel without picking up anything. I end up getting the spoon, which is fine. And now that I'm level 9, gold is no longer my priority, so it's time to start looking for some items with Unknown Eye. One thing that should be noted is that this is a game where we have an odd number of components going into Lugia and Ho-Oh. Lugia and Ho-Oh try to turn that odd into an even number, so they're going to give me a single item component instead of a fully crafted item. But with my multiple Unknown Eyes, I can definitely manipulate that, but we're still 2 rounds away from that, so I'm going to go for 2 components here, putting my Unknown Eye beside my Smeargle. We've got my level 9 team against this level 6 Alolan Raichu team, and just before the Alolan Raichu knocks out my Unknown Eye, my Abra goes, "Hey, over here," and takes the hit for it, and I'm able to get 2 item components. And in the next round, we're gonna do it again, but this time I only need 1 item component. As I mentioned before, an odd number of components will lead to Lugia and Ho-Oh only giving a single component, but if you have an even number of item components, you'll get a full item. So as long as this Unknown Eye is able to activate, I'll actually be 4 whole item components ahead of every other player. I made myself an upgrade. For all you music nerds, that means my Grookey is going to be a constant Accelerando with its drumming, and I'm also able to evolve myself a Wobbuffet. And this next fight against this Amorphous player is another loss, but I am able to get yet another item component. And now we're taking on Lugia and Ho-Oh. I am going to use an Unknown D and try to copy it with my Smeargle, but this is a little bit risky, since this is against a Marowak enhanced Lugia and Ho-Oh. But you know what? I have faith in my Delphox, maybe it'll even let me get 9 gold. And another thing I should mention is that despite my lead in money and items, my team is actually quite a bit weak. I definitely need to find a late game carry because Payday is definitely not going to cut it. I've also been struggling with a lack of frontline this entire time, so I'm definitely looking to turn things around with my team and drop Payday once I get my legendary unit. I also did a Human 6 check earlier and saw that my HM was Surf, which is a pretty strong ability because it allows for backline access. But let's first focus on the tower duo. I'm able to get my 2 Dittos, but after a few ability casts, my team is looking really weak, and my Delphox almost gets completely knocked out. It hangs on with a fraction of an HP as we trigger the Ho-Oh's Sacred Ash, and we're able to take down the tower duo, embarrassment averted. Final item that I get is a Power Lens, sure, and I decide to craft myself a Fluffy Tail and a Lucky Egg. I think Rocky Helmet and Reaper Cloth might have been better here, but without any other critical hit items, it's kind of hard to say. There are a lot of statuses in play, so I thought Fluffy Tail might be nice to have here. But regardless, we head into this Psychic Human Amorphous portal, and with my selection, I decided to grab myself a Deoxys, which is a great choice. Definitely could have made a case for a Shaman here, because I do have that Gracidia Flower, and a Psychic Smeargle copying that Shaman could have been pretty exciting. If I were to replay this game, I'd definitely pick up Shaman and give that a try, because that sounds like a lot of fun. But honestly, my brain was kind of in a scramble, because if I didn't convert this massive lead into a win, that would be a huge embarrassment and shame of my Pokemon Auto Chess career. But first things first, I decide to try out Surf on my Deoxys, and then I change my Deoxys into its bulkiest variant, which is Deoxys Defense. I use some Dittos to evolve myself a Thwackey, and I also pick up a Grookey from the shop because I actually plan on using 2 of these drumming monkeys. It's time to say goodbye to Payday and repurpose those items on an actual carry. There's not a lot of time left in the round, and it's kind of a scramble, but I end up with these set of items for my units, and I'm really slow on throwing in a final 9th unit, but I did successfully allow my Smeargle to copy my Thwackey for at least 1 round. A very awkward and incomplete looking Psychic team, but thankfully we're against a fairly weak Amorphous team. They're doing a pretty cool combo with Golisopod spawning in Amorphous enhanced bugs. Thankfully those bugs don't really deal any damage. They're just HP meat shields that get melted by my AoE damage, and shoutouts to my Wobbuffet for helping out a lot and cleaning up there. Alright, during that last fight, I was able to find myself a Solosis, who isn't necessarily the most reliable unit, but it's definitely a strong late game psychic carry, and using it is also going to enable Amorphous 3, which is pretty nice. Some small but not insignificant speed and HP buffs to my entire team. I'm also able to grab some evolutions, first in Metang and then in Kadabra, and I should probably leave this ball toy in, but for some reason I decided to swap it out with a Grookey. It's probably the better play for the late game, but right now my backline carries aren't very strong. I'm mostly relying on my Surf Deoxys, who probably would have appreciated more Amorphous bumps, but regardless, here's that ground team. They're looking very strong. Fortunately, my Smeargle gets a great ability cast while their Rhydon ties their shoelaces, then the Rhydon knocks itself out on my Power Lens, and somehow I'm actually able to come out on top with my Thwackey getting in on that action, smacking down that Groudon like it's a timpani. If there's a conductor out there in need of a percussionist for their orchestra, please hire this monkey. Let's move on to this carousel. Not the best selection of items, but there's actually one that I really want that I don't think many people are going to expect, and that's actually going to be the Wide Lens, increasing a unit's range by 2. Now, because I have Grookeys and Smeargles, my positioning is kind of locked, and Solosis only has 2 range. There's going to be situations where my Solosis is stuck behind 2 Grookeys, unable to attack, and Wide Lens is going to circumvent that. It's also going to allow my Solosis to stay in the back line and prevent situations where it will run around and get exposed. And shoutouts to whoever's stocking my shop shelves, because this round was a non-stop flow of Dittos, and I'm able to evolve myself a Duosion, which is going to be a huge step up from Solosis, because that's not only going to be doubling my Solosis stats and damage, but my Smeargle is now going to be casting an ability that's twice as strong as well. I'm also able to grab myself a second Thwackey, and with this I could even potentially go for Rillaboom, but honestly, 2 Thwackeys might be better than Rillaboom. 2 Thwackeys generate more PP than a Rillaboom, and they're also better at keeping my units locked in place, and we'll witness greatness in this fight as our Smeargle and Duosion, supported by 2 Thwackeys, they're able to melt through my opponent's team despite the immense amount of shields, and we're able to more than quadruple our opponent's damage. Alright, now I'm looking at my team, and I'm wondering, how can I make this even stronger? Well, I've got an awkward 7 psychic units. I can potentially replace one of my non-amorphous, non-human psychic units, so basically just the Metang, and I want to use the unit that's going to give my team the most amount of amorphous bumps possible, and that's actually going to be Jigglypuff, giving me both Fairy and Sound synergy. We'll keep that in mind as we move on to fight this amorphous dragon team, and they've actually got a very strong Palkia that's able to really mess up my team's positioning. It actually takes out most of my team, and it's tossing around my upgraded Thwackey over and over again. It's a scrappy fight that gets down to the last unit, but in the end, my Thwackey has scaled up too much and goes on a drum solo and finishes off the Cryogonal. Alright, next round is against the legendary birds. I decide to use an Unknown O to cook my team some food, and I might as well throw it beside my Smeargle in case the Unknown O somehow gets sniped. I also find an Igglybuff, and I decide to sell off my Metang for some money and start working my way towards that Jigglypuff that I talked about. We got a lot of nice foods cooked up for my units, and I decide to grab a Fluffytail because one of my weaknesses is the Vanillites that all of the amorphous opponents are running. Since my current team can't really position around Vanillish, the Fluffytail will be a nice way to prevent my Duosion from being permanently frozen. And before the round ends, I decide to just make the world's most expensive Jigglypuff, and that results in Fairy Synergy, Sound Synergy, and 2 more Amorphous bumps. And here's another Golisopod Amorphous team, with all of my units buffed up by foods. The giant bugs aren't able to do too much to me as I'm able to just burst them down over and over again, and that's going to result in a very solid victory for me. And yeah, we're pretty much reaching the ceiling of my team's power. There are still evolutions that we can obtain, but for now, I can't really foresee any adjustments, and we'll see if this board is enough to win me the game. We'll skip ahead to the next fight because I don't really do anything during the preparation phase. We're against a fairy team who's now looking to splash in some sound. They've got a very annoying Pheasantipity that's able to very annoyingly infatuate the entirety of my team, but my Duosion has a Fluffytail and it lands an amazing ability cast, pretty much sealing this round as a victory. Alright, there's 3 players left, everyone has a very strong team, and in this carousel there's a very dangerous item that could very much wreck my team. It's the Protective Pads, which allows its holder to deal double damage to units that have any amount of shield. And Grookey really doesn't like this item because he gives a little bit of shields to everything on your team. Fortunately for me, my opponents grab other items instead and I'm able to grab it for myself. And scouting through my opponent's team, I don't see a lot of shields on their teams, but the Protective Pads is still a decent item on Duosion, protecting it from retaliatory effects like Power Lens moving forward. Alright, let's take on the ground team. While I did pretty well in the last time that I faced this player, they have Monster 6 active, and it's very possible for their units to just scale up and become unkillable. But thankfully, I have that power lens on my tanky Deoxys, which is a great way to counter Rhydon, since if the Rhydon casts its execute ability against my Deoxys, the Deoxys will die, but it will reflect the execute damage back to the Rhydon and take it down with it, which is exactly what happens, and we win the round. Alright, next round is the Legendary Beasts. Beating them gives me not the best selection of items here, but I decided to grab an ability shield just to make my Deoxys a little bit tankier. I also forgot to use my Unknown O, which has been sitting on my bench, but that's fine. I have, however, been saving quite a bit of money. We're quickly approaching the end of the game, and I might as well go for a 3-star evolution before the game ends. I am very close to both Alakazam and Gardevoir. As we head into the next battle, I am able to evolve myself in Alakazam, but unfortunately I was a little bit too slow to actually get it before the battle starts. We're against the Amorphous Golisopod team, and they've positioned their team very well against me, and they've also rolled a very crucial Assault Vest on their Wonderbox Spiritomb. My team has a pretty hard time bursting through my opponent's front line. Meanwhile, their Deoxys is able to dismantle my team one by one, and with my Smeargle being locked down by status after status, it's actually a pretty convincing loss for me. That's not good. But what is good is that this Amorphous team does not have a power lens to defeat a Rhydon. So while I lose this fight against a Ghost, I wish I scouted my opponents. We're left to use our imagination to picture a Rhydon eating a bunch of bugs, cooked and served constantly by a pair of Chef Golisopods. So shoutouts to this ground player for knocking the Amorphous team out of the game for me. Alright, this round, as we run out of money, we're able to squeeze out one more evolution in Gardevoir. It's probably a better carry than Duosion, but at this point, I don't think it really matters. Unless we get really unlucky with monster targeting, our team does pretty well against that ground team. So let's go ahead and take them on. The main two units that you want to look out for are the two Dons, that is of the Rye and Grow varieties. Fortunately for us, the Rhydon gets taken down pretty quickly, but the Groudon actually starts to pick up a lot of kills and starts to scale up, and using its ability, it's even able to snipe down my Duosion. But my Thwackies are also very quickly scaling up with their items, ability casts, and sound synergy, and as soon as that Groudon walks within range of my two Thwackies, it's time for a Monkey Drummer duet, and with everyone working together, their attacks are able to whittle down that Groudon and win me the fight. Pretty nice win against that opponent who now only has 2 HP, so we'll have to do it again. If we aren't able to win now, we can always use our Unknown O in the next PvE round, but let's hope that we won't have to. Alright, potentially the final matchup of the game, let's go. Our opponent is now using a Haunter, which is a pretty nice tech against my ability casting team, but it's not enough to slow down so many units that are being empowered by 2 Thwackies. Almost all of my units are contributing some damage somewhere, and this fight ends up being even more one-sided than the last one. It's a decisive victory as we take a stupid first place. Let's take a look at this final score screen where I have almost 140 gold over the player in second place. Honestly, I don't think I played this game very well, but whatever sloppy mistakes I made were easily paid off by my excess gold from those paydays, and a win is a win. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed the game, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care.